Welcome to Fortress of Faith with Tom Wallace, calling North America to repentance and revival.
Welcome back to the Corner of Truth and Courage. You're listening to Fortress of Faith. This is Tom Wallace. We have been living in what I call the Age of Mythomaniacs. Myths, lies, deception. It is so embedded into our culture that it's hard to discern between the real and the false, the truth and the lie. Every day in the news you hear misinformation, disinformation, charges like that, fake news, all that's flying around on both sides of the political argument. Lies have been powerful tools, shaping societies and worldviews, often with devastating consequences. In our modern world that we live in, misinformation spreads faster than ever before. The influence of lies, whether grand or subtle, continues to wreak havoc on the truth and on reality. From historical examples to contemporary issues, we're living in a society of lies, crafted and upheld by mythomaniacs, those who compulsively lie and create false narratives for their own benefit and their own gain and their own agenda. Charles Spurgeon, one of the great preachers of the 19th century, said this, and I tell you, he's so eloquent in what he says. I love reading Spurgeon. Had the privilege of being in his church. It doesn't stand like it used to. It was bombed out during World War II by the Germans, but the frontage of the church, the Metropolitan Tabernacle there in London, still stands, and it would have been a grand church building of its day. He said this, "He that perverts truth shall soon be incapable of knowing the truth from the false. If you persist in wearing glasses that distort, everything will be distorted to you." Now, let that sink in. Let me say it again. He that perverts the truth shall soon be incapable of knowing the truth from the false. In other words, you're not going to be able to discern. If you keep sending out lie after lie after lie, eventually you're going to come to the point where you believe the lie yourself, that it is true, and you're going to be incapable of knowing what is really true or false. If you persist in wearing glasses that distort, everything will be distorted to you. It was Adolf Hitler that gave us the idea that the bigger the lie, the better. One of the most infamous proponents of lying for political gain and using it as a political weapon, propaganda, was Adolf Hitler. He wrote in his manifesto, 1925, Mein Kampf, he outlined the concept of the big lie, a falsehood so enormous that people would believe it simply because they couldn't imagine anyone having the audacity to distort the truth so completely. Hitler's chief propagandist was Joseph Goebbels. He famously echoed this strategy. If you tell the lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. According to Goebbels, the state could maintain this lie as long as it shielded its people from the political, economic, and military consequences of the deception. In this way, truth became the state's greatest enemy. Now, think of that. When you, as a political party, have sold lies and deception and illusions to your people, the truth then becomes the enemy of the state, and you cannot afford to let the truth be revealed. And so you have to take out anyone or anything, any organization that is trying to get the truth out there. That's why they want to control social media. That's why they hate Elon Musk, because Elon Musk has taken away one of the jewels that was out there being used for their propaganda, and now it cannot be used for propaganda, but instead for trying to keep the truth out there so that people could know the truth. Just yesterday, when we tried to post on Facebook our broadcast from yesterday talking about the wins and the great accomplishments that Israel has made against their enemies, Facebook told us we couldn't post it because it doesn't fit their community standards. Everything in there was absolute truth, well documented. But they can't have that on Facebook because that is, again, anything that's true, they have to, because it's an enemy to the state. They cannot let that get out there. It's when we began to make common the myth, the lie, the deception of the origins of man, and we made that the standard truth in our schools and in our society, I think is when America really seriously stepped on that slippery slope. And today we're in a free fall. Since Charles Darwin's publication of Origin of Species in 1859, many aspects of his theory of evolution have remained unproven, despite over 100 years of scientific exploration. Yet the tenets of evolution persist to be drilled into us as truth. And they can never acknowledge that there's a divine creator, because it would be unthinkable to them to acknowledge that there's a creator, because it would exist the existence of a God and existence of a moral standard. And that would undermine the foundation of secular modernism. Thus, the narrative of human origin through natural selection, which is the lie, has become the truth. And the truth is the enemy, which is God, that God created. And so, by the way, too, if we are animals, if we, came from animals, then there's no morality. Man can live any way he wants to live. There's no right or moral wrong or moral right. There's no standard of right and wrong. And lies would not be a moral problem or anything else that a person wishes to do if we're just mere animals. And these myths are destroying lies. Let me give you an example. When they tell us the myth, the lie, that's not a baby in there. That is just, tissue. And we're going to ignore the fact that, it's my body, the mother says. Yes, that is your body, but the body in your body is not your body. That's your baby's body. And it is real. And this idea of saying reproductive rights, we're trying to take away reproductive rights. No, ladies, reproduce. In fact, we actually want you to do that. We don't want you to kill your baby. That's what we want. We're not against reproductive rights. And my body, my choice, all that, again, is part of the deception, part of the illusions that are being put out there. This transgender, and it just leads to further and further stuff. This transgender debate, living in illusions, or rather delusions. The transgender ideology represents another form of societal myth-making. The idea that a person can change their biological sex through identity alone has become widely accepted, even though it flies in the face of biological science. Gender is determined by chromosomes, XX for females and XY for males. And it cannot be changed. It's just the way it is. Yet those who push the narrative assert that gender is fluid and subjective. Figures like Bruce Jenner, now who wants to be called Caitlyn, who claim to be a female trapped in a man's body, are celebrated for their courage and being true to themselves. However, the celebration of an illusion over the reality distorts the truth and leaves many trapped in confusion. Believing in the reality and biology is considered wrong. Transgenderism is not only an issue of illusion. I've said this often. It's primarily a rebellion against the order of God. This isn't, I've got a mental issue. No, it's just a simple rebellion against God. They're shaking their fist in heaven saying, I will not submit to your design, God. I will choose my design for myself, and I will not submit to your control over me. Friedrich Nietzsche famously said that truths are illusions, that we have forgotten our illusions. There's a lot of double talk with him. In a society that rejects absolutes, the line between illusion and the reality blurs. And what begins as a harmless illusion can devolve into a dangerous delusion. And that is where we keep going and going and going. And now we move into a new political time in our calendar, and you're left with who's telling you the truth. Well, the same people who told us while the fires were burning in Portland and Minneapolis that this is just a peaceful protest, clearly were the ones who were telling us a lie. These are the same people who were telling us that the borders are closed and that there's not a problem here. These are also the same people who told us that Bidenomics are working and that Build Back Better and yet they're now trying to scramble to fix all these problems. And these are the same people that told us that that's not a baby in there, it's just tissue. There's no immorality in choosing your gender, and just go with what your heart tells you. And it's okay to cut and mutilate children and to take away their gender. And these are the same people that want to continue in government. And the sad part of that is that they're being believed. They're saying the other side is wicked and immoral, and they've created a monster. And that's what you do when you're in politics and you don't have a good policy. Your policies are not working. And you really can't argue on the basis and the strength of your policies. So what do? You attack your opponent and you make them into a monster. And you create the illusion of evil and destruction, and how this person is going to destroy everything you love. And boy, they've been doing that through this political season. The mythomaniacs and the society of lies and the nation of liars has destroyed our nation. We need to return back to God, because God tells us that there is truth, there is a standard, there are absolutes, and the truth will set you free. That's it for today. Join us again tomorrow at the corner of truth and courage. God bless you.